slides. First speaks Peter Lusk, CEO of Southern Cross Kids Camp. The Southern Cross Kids Camp interrupts the cycle of abuse and neglect by conducting camping programs around the nation. Peter has been involved since the organisation inception in 2001. Peter's family has a history in agriculture. Together with his brother Gary, they commenced Lilydale Instant Lawn 35 years ago. Today, one of the country's most successful turf companies. Peter left the farm years ago to work and lead teams involved in serving disadvantaged kids and youth in various settings. So, Peter, I'm going to hand over to you to present, and then once you're done, we will introduce Tennille.
Thank you. Absolute honour to be with you guys tonight. As has been said, we run camps around the nation for kids that are doing it pretty tough. We did a video at the end of last year that we're going to show you of 3 young women from various places around the nation that first came to camp as campers, as kids, because life wasn't going that well for them. And they've returned in, these more recent times as leaders. And you get to be a leader on camp because, while everything may not be perfect, life's going pretty well. Let's take a look at the video. It goes for a few minutes, but I think it's worth it.
Sporadic is just who I am as a person, so that is fun.
Okay, Mark, go get Lizzie. I like cheese.
Statistically, I should be dead by either my own hand or by my mother's hand, or I should be in jail. I am in like a 0.1% that no one actually expected me to survive. So when I was 2, services like Anglicare and DHS became involved because my mother was very mentally ill. There was a lot of self-harm and suicide attempts that were occurring in the household. There were assault charges, harassment charges, with police being at the house most nights, an ambulance there every other night that they weren't. So I eventually got sent to my then stepdad's parents. When I was there, I was physically and sexually abused. Everything I was didn't matter. If my own mother wasn't going to love me, then no one else was going to, and I was worth nothing.
Because we used to have both my parents, and then we had a younger brother, but unfortunately he passed. So living with our dad, he was very lazy. He didn't really look after us. And because my brother had autism, I practically looked after him because he's older than me, but at that stage of life he couldn't quite look after himself. We didn't have food majority of the time, so we'd share food. Did mean that my brother and I didn't get a happy childhood. It did make me feel lonely sometimes, but I was just grateful that I always had my brother and that we weren't separated.
In my family there was a lot of abuse of all kinds. The earliest thing I can sort of remember is my brothers being taken away by child services. It kind of affected the perspective that I had on the world in that I was kind of afraid of grown-ups. I was worried that I wouldn't make good choices. I was worried that people wanted to hurt me, or that I would be taken away from my mum or my sister. That was probably my biggest fear, is leaving my little sister. Just the thought of being separated from her after my brothers left was scary. I didn't want to be alone, but I also didn't want her to be alone. Yeah.
When I was 7, I was referred to the camps by one of the local churches. Heading in on the bus, I was like, I'm excited, I'm the strong one, I am here, I am outgoing, I am loud. And then I got to camp and met my buddy. I'm pretty sure I was painful as anything.
I was introduced to Southern Cross Kids Camp probably when I think I was 6 years old. I had never been on a camp. I'd never been away from my mum for that long, and I remember sitting in the back of this little bus and looking out the window going, oh my gosh, like, where are we going? I've never been here before. And when we pulled up and saw all of the buddies standing out the front holding their name signs, they're waving signs with our names on it.
You are greeted by this clump of people holding signs and cheering. I remember looking out the window being like, what? They know my name? There's people with a sign with my name on it?
So my perspective did change once going to Southern Cross Kids Camp, because I got to meet other kids that had been through similar situations and that deal with the same things as I do. Yeah, it was really good having the memory books because we get to look back on it and to see actual photos, and because you also get a little note from your buddy at the end of the book as well. So it was good to spend the all that time with our buddy doing activities and them encouraging us to get out of our comfort zones and try new things as well.
It was overarching happiness to be in a new environment and have someone there who cares. I was always given the time and the space to be me. I was always told that what I was and what I could give was enough, and that I was enough, and that hits deep. It gives you hope.
I had never had an undivided adult's attention. My favourite thing's swimming in the pool as a kid and just doing absolutely anything I wanted to do. Face painting, playing sports. And
so there's a dress up section. Usually for most camps they have a lot of costumes to dress up on, and I decided that this clown costume was what I was going to do. And there is 1,000,001 photos of me just walking around camp in this costume, living my best life.
I think the most significant lesson I learned on that first camp was how to trust another adult. Like that it's actually not all adults are bad, and some of them just love you because they love you, not because they want something from you. I'd definitely say that Southern Cross Kids Camps has helped me become the person that I am today and helped me create the life that I have today. My future is filled with hope, and yeah, I'm excited to make memories with my own child and hopefully more in the future. My dream for Southern Cross Kids Camp in Emerald is to have a campsite of our own. Being so rural, we're so far away from every other place that has a decent campsite. It would be really nice to have a facility to hold camp at.
I'm currently a teacher, so I actually teach across both primary and secondary. So I'm doing education support in a primary school, working with these beautiful little 5-year-olds who a lot of them have like autism spectrum disorder and other learning difficulties. And then the other days in the week, I teach music at a secondary school.
Oh, I started working at Macca's about 2.5 years ago, and then within the first year I was offered management. I've actually recently applied for the police force because I want to be a police officer and specialise in probably canine squad, like search and rescue. But I look forward to being a buddy for a child that can remember me in the future, hopefully, and thinks that like I can be there for a week that they're going to remember and enjoy for forever, hopefully.
It's important for our organisation to keep growing because there are still so many children who are from broken homes who have been subject to neglect and abuse. And
I didn't want to be alive, and that's a memory that I have from all through my childhood. I just didn't want to be alive. I didn't see a future. It was dark. There was suddenly this very, very tangible experience that I knew was coming back. When we left camp, it wasn't a goodbye, I won't see you again. It was a see you next year.
It doesn't fix or change your situation at home. You know, they can't take you out of that, but they can take you for a week and give you this beautiful week of happy memories, especially for children like myself who don't get a lot of happy memories at home or just a chance to be a kid.
I want Southern Cross Kids Camp to grow and expand because it will help other children to go on camps like myself.
It's hard to imagine what my life might be like today had I not had the opportunity to go along to Southern Cross Kids Camp. I don't know what my life might look like, but I don't think it would be nearly as beautiful as it is today.
There we go. I think seeing that video, is far more powerful than me just talking away for, a number of minutes. But I will say, just before we hand over to Neil, is that it's hard to be something that you've never seen. And so at Southern Cross, each kid that gets to come on camp has one adult that looks after them for the week. So for the girls who come, they have an outstanding female role model from a whole variety of settings. They might be a uni student studying medicine. They might be a mum who's juggling a career that invests a week like that. They might be a social worker, who's decided to take a week's vacation so they can be on camp. And the kids sometimes ask some interesting questions. They'll say like, why are you doing this? And do you get paid? And when the answer is no, I don't get paid, I'm here because I want to invest into your life, it is so powerful. And for Southern Cross, because it's International Women's Day today, I looked through to see our key leaders and who they were and what gender they were, actually. And of our, we'll have about 700 to 800 volunteers across the organisation around the country this year. But we've probably got about 75 key leaders. And of those, 50 are female, actually. So we have like 2/3 of our key people are female. And interestingly, like we see those 3 girls on video tonight, and just today we got contacted by another, next generation down almost, another young female that came on camp, did our junior youth camp as well, and is now coming back, has applied to come back as a junior leader. And that just happened today. And whenever that happens for us, it feels like payday. But interestingly, we have 2/3 of our key leaders are female. And I think we would probably have 3/4 of the kids who have been on camp and have returned as leaders are female. And you go, I said at the start, it's hard to be what you've never seen. It's a whole lot easier to be when you have seen it. And these girls have seen, they have had actually outstanding female leaders in their lives. And there you go. It's kind of, we're 22 years into the journey, but we're seeing more and more of what we call payday. And, for us, that's super important. I've probably taken way more time than what I should. But Elizabeth, yep.
So is your camp affiliated with the church, or do you preach the Bible in your camp?
We've got a good question. We have, we say we're a faith-based organisation, which we are. So each of the camps has a host local church. And having said that, we also are really respectful that we have kids from a whole variety of backgrounds and faith, no faith, all that sort of stuff, and everyone is welcome on a Southern Cross Kids camp. So we're really respectful in that space as well.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks, Peter. That was an amazing video and a really powerful message, especially on International Women's Day. So I'll pass on to Tennille, our second speaker for tonight. So Tennille is the Managing Director and co-founder of For Change Co. Now, Tennille is passionate about the power of social enterprise and generating sustainable social change, and is dedicated to spending her time creating a community of support and opportunities for young people who are experiencing disadvantage. Now, Tennille combines her background in community development with her strong interest in business and strikes a balance with the social and the enterprise. Now, on a personal note, I've known Tennille for a couple of years now, because we're doing the exec MBA, and she is one of the most amazing young women leaders that I've ever met in my life. So I look forward to hearing the story in detail as well.
Very kind. Thank you, Sat, for the introduction, and thank you, Peter. That was a beautiful video and story, everything that you have told. Unfortunately, I don't have a video, so you're going to have to listen to me. Apologies. I do have slides though, which are very exciting. So yes, as I was introduced, my name is Tennille Gilbert. I'm the co-founder and managing director of For Change Co. For Change Co is a hospitality-based social enterprise, and we exist to support young people out of the cycle of homelessness. So we do that by training and employing young people who are at risk of or who have experienced homelessness in our own venues. We provide paid on-the-job training to these young people across about a 6 to 8 month period. We partner with local housing support organisations who refer the young people to us to make sure that they have stable accommodation and wraparound supports whilst they go through our program. That's really essential. We do know that unfortunately young people who are in a situation of homelessness, who are sleeping rough, for example, most likely won't have the opportunity to engage in employment and to really get the best out of the program. So it's really important to us that we partner there. And as the program goes along, we support the young person into further education or employment. And what really differentiates us as a program and as a social enterprise is that we pay our young people for every hour that they work and train with us, because we know the value that they bring to the work that we do, but also that they need to be valued and respected. And to the video that was shown, many of our young people have been in similar situations to those young women. And they need to know that they are valued and respected. They need to know that they can trust the adults around them. They need to build up that confidence. And so much of that is embedded in our programs. I might just flick to the next slide because I'm sitting on the front page. No stress, take your time. I can talk through. Anyway, just to round off. So as the program goes through, we then also partner with local employers and we support young people to transition out into ongoing employment. We started about 8 years ago. My co-founder, Dan, he pretty much has a French background, knows how to make crepes, and he decided to take his crepe riddles out onto St Kilda Beach and make crepes. And it was doing okay and he was making some profit, and he thought, why don't I use this money for good? And he was living in St Kilda where homelessness, is quite a prevalent issue, and decided to actually donate all of the profit that was coming through the crepes into local organisations that were supporting young people experiencing homelessness. So we have very humble beginnings, as a lot of not-for-profits do, and we spent about 4 years volunteering to get our work up. A lot of that time was spent with a big team of volunteers, most of us working a bunch of other jobs on the side, trying to make this happen. And eventually 4 years ago, we were able to get some funding to actually pay ourselves and make it a real thing, as I say. So up on the screen, these are our current businesses that we run. So basically, if you're not wholly familiar with the concept of a social enterprise, there's a few key aspects to it. First is that we run based on a social or environmental mission. So that is why we exist. We don't exist to make coffee. We exist to train and employ young people. So our cafes are not there to be, these coffee making machines or to really generate, profit and do all that fun stuff. They're really there for the training and employment. And then ideally, profit comes out of them, which goes back into the work that we do. The other couple of things about a social enterprise is that at least 50% of our trade revenue has to come from trade. So what we do is hospitality, and at least 50% of our profit has to go back into our impact and achieving our mission. So they're the three things that we need to tick off as a social enterprise. As you can see, we started as Create to Change, and that still exists. So that's our mobile food truck. So that goes out to schools, universities, events, workplaces, and that's a real, it's a profit generator because crepes are really cheap to make, just a little side, little secret. So it makes a nice profit, and it's a massive billboard for what we do. So it really kind of gets people interested and to understand what we do. Then we have our Coffee for Change coffee cart, which is an RMIT training. And I'll show you in the next slide, but that actually is, is the first module of our training program. So it's this really quiet space, and it's actually designed to welcome young people in. So it's designed not to be a busy operating cafe. And what that means is a lot of our young people have either had no experience in the workplace or a negative experience in the workplace. And our job initially is to write or rewrite a positive work history for them, basically. So that's what we try to create in that space. And then our 4 cafes, as you can see, are spread out a little bit around Melbourne, and we really focus on place-based support. So for example, in Brunswick, we look to the inner north for the young people that we work with. At the University of Melbourne, similarly, Middle Park, we look in the south, and Belfield, we look a little bit more outer north. So we have a really good spread at the moment. To date, we've been able to support we have been able to support 68 young people through our programs, and we've provided about 11,000 hours of paid on the job employment and training, with an 84% of success rate of young people completing the program, transitioning into education or employment, and staying out of the cycle of homelessness. So massive win for us. I'll flick to the next one. So sorry, it's a little bit small, but that just gives you the idea of how our program works. It's really integrated. It goes across 3 modules of training, learning different skills along the way, building up confidence, building up networks, communities, all the things that we know are essential to setting the young person on the right track. And surrounding that is things like financial literacy workshops, things like goal setting workshops, career kind of immersion, so work experience, and looking at different, working with different partners that we have. So there's a bunch of things that we do to make sure that that young person is kind of given all the tools, I guess, in their tool belt, right, to go out and to create their independent future. We know a lot of our young people come into our program not knowing what's next for them, and barely even knowing what they're doing in the program. You know, that someone said, hey, come along to this program, probably similar to the camps, and they said, okay, we'll give it a shot. And they've also often been told, you know, this is what you're going to be. You're going to, you know, be struggling. You're going to be living off Centrelink, et cetera, et cetera. What we're trying to create is a different vision for the future for the young people that we work with. So we really work with them to think about, what can your future look like? Because it can look like what you want to and what you want to choose. And so much of that comes back to the community of people that we surround ourselves with, the confidence that we build in the young people, and the soft skills and technical skills that they learn along the way. Click to the next one, but I think it's just a photo. Yeah. So that's most of my rambling about who we are and what we do. We have, you know, when it comes back to women, we have an incredible team. We are female led. So I'll take that one. And we have, I think about 55% of our managers are female, which is a really nice place to be in. For us though, it's really about, you know, it is about leadership, but it's also about what women do to empower and create communities. And I think that's something that was really deep in my heart. You know, I studied and worked around in community development, and we know within that space that if we empower women, we empower communities. So I believe really strongly in that and what we can create as a part of that. But we do work with, you know, we work with all genders, we work with all backgrounds, all, you know, everything. We have a really wide range of young people that we work with. And at the end of the day, we, you know, treat them all with respect and as individuals, and support them each to decide and create their own futures. So I'll tell you one brief story before I finish up. So I can't help myself. So I'll tell you a story about a young man named Roy. So Roy came into our program about a year ago. He had experienced homelessness, and he found himself in supported accommodation with a partner organisation of ours called Launch Housing. You might have heard of. They're quite a big homelessness service support in Melbourne. And when he came on his first day, he had this cap pulled down over his head. You've probably seen some of these as well. Pulled right down, you could barely see his eyes. He had these huge baggy clothes on. And I reckon he said about 10 words in that first shift. He was just so reserved, so inside of himself, and was not willing to open up. And, you know, we don't ask young people for their history or where they've come from. We ask them for their strengths and who they want to become. So I don't know the full depth of what Roy's past was, but obviously he'd gone to a point where he was really, you know, reserved and, you know, inside of himself. So across the program, Roy took a long time to come out of his shell. He really struggled to trust really the adults that were training him, and to build confidence, and to open up and to not think that, again, that the adults were just there for, because they were getting paid, or because, oh, this is where I have to be. But he really loved his coffee. He absolutely loved his coffee. All he wanted to do was like pour the perfect latte art, which is often the expectation of a lot of our trainees. If I just pour the perfect latte art, I'll be the best barista. So he worked so hard on that, and we kept coming back to focusing on this experience and this goal that he had, while surrounding it with the goals around confidence and around talking to others and customer engagement and things like that. So he went along, he had a few mishaps, there were points where he really, he wasn't responding to training, and we had to try a lot of different things. And it got to the end of his program, so about 6 months in, and we reached out to Axel Coffee, who you might know. We've got a lot of cafes around. We said, look, we've got this young person who's an incredible barista. He can be a little bit reserved, but he's got these great skills. We think he'd be a great fit. And he did get the job at an Axel Coffee roaster. And on the first day, our impact manager went to visit him and kind of called him and said, hey, I'm just outside. Do you want to come say hi? And he said, oh, no, it's all good. I've got friends in here. Like, I don't need to talk to you. And then a couple of weeks later, we had his graduation, and he turned up and he was wearing a bucket hat, which is actually a big progression, because it was kind of above his head and you could really see his face, and he had much less kind of, much slimmer clothing on. And it was just that physical transition and confidence standing up taller. And these are the things we can't measure, right? I can say the 84% number, and that's all good and well, but the confidence and this assurance of self and the ability to connect with other people and to plan that future, that's what it's all about. With that, thank you.
Cool.
No.
It's okay. No, thank you very much. Both amazing, and obviously I love how you guys are changing mindsets in the younger generation, and obviously driving them to be leaders in the future, not just now, but also inspiring the next generation. So look, we're going to open up to questions. I'm sure there's a few questions in the room. I'll start with the simplest, easiest ones, which is, what's next for your organisation?
So not simple. Next for our organisation, look, not to bring the old C word COVID into the room, but COVID really gave us a pretty difficult time over the last few years, unsurprisingly, as a hospitality-based business. And so this year we're actually really focused on stabilising. It's a little bit of a boring answer, but it's the truth, because if we don't have stable foundations and stable business, then we cannot grow and we cannot support the young people that we exist to serve. So that is kind of the basis at the moment. But along with that, we'll be doubling the numbers of young people that we work with this year, because we do have the venues and the space to do that, whilst we work on consolidating our venues. And then we're looking at some different a couple of different things. One side is around our revenue streams. So we know that cafes are awesome training and employment grounds for young people. They serve us really, really well, but they're really difficult to run, and they do have a very small profit margin. So we are looking at ways that we can use our skills around food, coffee, training, etc., to diversify our revenue streams. So things like catering and retail are things that we're looking at the moment. Which will also provide other impact opportunities to train and employ young people in different areas. And the other thing that we're looking at is partnerships. So we know again that what we do really works and has great outcomes, but we know it's also can be quite resource inefficient to be doing that all in our own venues. So we're looking at how do we partner with like-minded, values-aligned organisations for them to run part of their training, our training and employment in their venues. Engage, changing mindset around employing young people who have backgrounds of disadvantage, supporting employers to embrace the fact that, yeah, there are labour shortages, but there are also so many young people and so many people with disabilities and so many asylum seekers, refugees, so many people who can take on those jobs that we need to be supporting, but we do need to provide supported employment for that. So that's kind of our range of vision right now.
Thanks, Tania. I reckon our next big thing came about because of a 7-year-old Aboriginal girl on our Bendigo camp. a couple of years ago. The kids had the opportunity to paint what hope looked like. And she painted, which we've made into a postcard actually, she painted herself as a leader in the future on camp. And a lot of the kids say that they want to come back as a leader. And so because our camps have been primarily, or been exclusively for primary age kids, we've actually been piloting our junior youth camp, which we call Wild, with the idea that then is that we're creating a pathway of connection. I mentioned before that the girl that signed up today to become a junior leader on our regular camps, you can do that when you're 15 onwards. And then, you know, when you're 18, you need to be 18 to be a buddy on camp and look after a kid. So that we want to create that pathway of connection. So that junior youth piece was missing. So we've sort of been piloting that for the last couple of years, and it's gone really well. And some of the other camps around the country are going, we want to do that too. And we want them to do that if they've got the capacity to do it. And so from that painting, from that 7-year-old girl in Bendigo, you know, when we saw that day, because we've been tossing it around, we're like, we can't wait anymore. We need to do this. So our junior youth program across the country, that'll be next.
Cool. I'll open up to the audience. Any questions?
Yeah, hi, Peter Berg. Great presentations. Thanks, Peter and Neil. Really, as Sab said, amazing stories and what you're involved in. And I guess my question really is, have you got any collaboration or association with Rotary clubs anywhere or Rotarians? Because this is fitting into, I know, our own club, what we do, and it seems that, you know, so it'd be great to make connections within our club with what you're doing. And we have a community welfare committee, so homelessness, you mentioned Launchhausen, where we've got associations with, and we do a lot of homelessness work, and the welfare of the young community. So, and I'm sure other Rotary clubs have got the same thing. So just, to me, that seemed an obvious, you know, link, and, you know, and terrifically, well, the service areas that we're involved in.
Yeah, I think for us, it's been more accidental up till now. So, you know, we could do a whole lot better in that space.
Yes, a little bit the same. I haven't had a lot to do. Have talked to a couple of Rotary clubs, but haven't had any further connection. But we're always open. Like, for us, this is a huge issue that we're tackling, and we only do it by creating communities of support around us. So we're always looking for that support and those connections.
George?
I mean, Peter, you spoke about the Indigenous community. And I imagine you've had some exposure to that. What do you see as primarily the differences and the challenges that you face with the Indigenous community versus non-Indigenous?
That's a good question. We actually have, I think we have 3 young people who identify as being First Nations people at the moment in our program, but prior to that, we actually didn't have, I think we maybe had 1 or 2 across the rest of the cohort, interestingly. And I think the change, we've actually been actively reaching out to Indigenous-led organisations and kind of discussing what we're doing with them and trying to engage. As I mentioned, within our program structure, we work really closely with the specialist housing services, and we work really closely with kind of, you know, community service providers, because we don't have a lot of that on staff. So for us, it's been about creating those connections so that we make sure we have the wraparound support. I think a lot of the young people that we work with who are First Nations young people, often it's the cultural differences. It's perhaps not feeling welcomed and supported within the space that can be really tricky. It's feeling different. It's feeling not having that person, you know, not seeing what you could be. So there's a lot of those things that come in, and we have our own reconciliation action plan that we've been working on, and we know that things like engaging with the family, engaging with the community more deeply, and really just having those supports so that the young person can connect with their community is really important. Because, yeah, unfortunately, we don't currently have any First Nations people on our staff, which is something you know, we want our staff to reflect our group of young people in order to best support them. So that's something that's a downfall for us, I'd say, at the moment, in better supporting that group of young people.
Cool. We've become really good friends with a guy called Don Hayward, who's a fairly significant Aboriginal leader in Adelaide. And so we're learning stacks off Don and his connections, I suppose. Because we have, like some of our camps, well, say Darwin camp is pretty much it is exclusively for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island kids, because there are some Torres Strait Island kids that come on that camp as well. And one of the things that Don has said from the start is that we need to be aware, because I suppose like a Caucasian perspective is that we live in Australia, big place. We might say things a little bit differently, but pretty similar in that, you know, in that world. But from an Aboriginal perspective, there's so many nations, you know, and Don says that I'll give you my best guess, or, you know, what is appropriate for me and my people. But when you're in Darwin, he's like, I'll put you in touch with someone up there, because what they say might be really different to what I might say, because I'm from another nation. And so I think being aware of that is really important for us. You know, we had a new Mildura camp start this year, last year. And so there's a, you know, fairly large Aboriginal population, so they were well represented on camp. And one of the things that Mildura camp did, because the camp was held at Lake Barmera over in South Australia, and so they through Don contacted the local mob, and one of the elders came and did some stuff, you know, with the kids and all that stuff, and with the leaders as well. So we're just, it's early days and we're learning lots, but we're trying to connect as well as we can with the local mobs where we are. Because it's going to be what's relevant in Bundaberg is going to be really different to what's relevant at Fitzroy Crossing or Darwin or Adelaide or, you know, Eastern Melbourne or Wurundjeri country. Or so, yeah. Does that kind of answer?
Reg, we'll give you.
Which one? I'd like to thank you both for giving us vivid illustration of young women at work on International Women's Day, you know, doing amazing work. My question is a simple one, not so simple to answer, I suspect. What have been the biggest challenges for both of you in getting your organisation or enterprise up and running? Social enterprise, I think you're both social enterprises in different ways. Be interested in what you have to say.
We've been going 22 years. When you say it, there's two different things that come to mind. You know, for one of our early camps, I remember sitting around the kitchen table going, we haven't got any money, we're running camp, what are we going to do? And it's like, okay, well, we'll just all stick it on our credit card and get on with life, right? Now, we actually got a grant at the last minute, so that didn't have to happen, right? So there's always that. But you mentioned COVID, you know, volunteering around the world took a step down. So rebuilding teams has been, you know, a significant challenge. We're probably doing pretty well, but say if we had a kid, our camps are generally pretty small because, you know, as we said, we have one adult for every kid plus staff as well. So, you know, 25, 30 might be an average camp. So if a camp was 30 pre-COVID, it's probably 25 or 22 now, just because it has been harder to get the team. But we're building again. So, you know, I just go, yeah, I'll always tell myself, you know, we've got to speak the vision. We've got to speak the vision. We've got the best thing. We're doing the best thing on the face of the planet. So are you, by the way. But you know what I mean? We are. Like we're sold out on believing that We're delivering hope, we're changing lives, we're doing the best thing you can do on the face of the planet. So if we say that well, we'll get the volunteers and hopefully we'll manage to pay the bills.
Fantastic.
How long have we got? Challenges, many. Look, I think, you know, someone said to me the other day, you know, you are doing one of the hardest things that is possible to be doing. You're trying to run a business, a reasonably small business, hospitality-based businesses, and you're training and employing young people who are unemployable to most people. It's not an easy feat, and I think that we need to be really honest in social enterprise about what it looks like, because I think we do talk about the challenges, but I think we often fluff over them as well. You know, how, you know, well, you know, we're all okay because it's all good in the end. But I think that it's been, the biggest challenge has probably been me in my head, to be honest, if I'm being really truthful about what this all looks like. When we kind of decided to make the transition to an employee-based model rather than a volunteer-based model, that was a huge challenge for me, because you know, my parents had invested in my education. They had kind of, you know, my sister had gone down the kind of corporate route, and my parents looked at me like, what are you doing? And you know, my sister, I remember my sister looking at me and just going, are you serious? Like, just get a real job. And I was like, okay, that hits. Older sis, thank you. And there were a lot of questions around, you know, is this really going to work? How is this going to work? Why would someone fund us over, you know, Southern Cross or something else? You know, there's so much out there to fund. The belief in self that, you know, that this is worth it and the vision is worth it, and it is. And the best, you know, the biggest reward is when people say, you know, I believe in that vision too, like, good on you, that's working, and you can see it, and you can see that success. So look, for me, it's still that every day, it's a challenge in my head around, can we keep doing this? You know, where's the funding going to come from? You know, how are we going to make sure this young person gets to the end of the program? How are we going to get people to come in and buy a coffee? You know, like, every single question there is there. So yeah, look, I welcome that question, because I think it's so important that we do talk about how challenging it is, and that we look at how do we build up the resources of the sector, and how do we build up the resourcing within charities, because we're expecting us to run on absolutely nothing and have no admin costs or wages or anything like that, and we're letting, you know, every other business get away with, you know, paying all of the wages and doing all the things. So yeah, I think it's real. I think it's a really real challenge. But yes, at the end of the day, it is all worth it. I promise I'm still in it. But I just like to be vulnerable and, you know, admit where things can go.
Good on you.
All right, so I've been given the proverbial Oscars music starting. So we'll hold off any questions for after. We'll close off the meeting, and then I think you guys can be around and everyone's got questions. I've got a few more. So look, I just want to thank both of you. I think the presentation has been amazing. As I said, I appreciate all the work that you guys do, especially in how you guys are inspiring the next generation. So as a thank you from Rotary Melbourne, we've got a little gift for you guys, which includes 2023 socks, which are 200% Australian, made by past president Bill Endersby and Wilderness Twitter, and 100 moments of Rotary book. Don't remember which one's which, but we'll swap at the end. Thank you. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.